Hello, everyone. We have a very special Idle Insights. We have Mr. B. Dave Walters in the house today, talking about lots of D&D things, from Red Pandas to D&D Live itself. Actually, let's delve into D&D Live. You are all over the place.
My infestation has spread far and wide through D&D Live. That is true. I'm hosting the show. I'm running a game Friday night, and I'm playing in the last game on Saturday night. Yeah.
What does this feel like? I mean, I know you DM a lot of games. You run a lot of 20th level epic games, but you do have kind of all-star casts as well that you're dealing with, and some personalities that you have not dealt with before. This all has to be like really exciting.
It's great. So first of all, if y'all know me, yes, level 20 is my niche. That's my jam. It's the thing I love the most. Although Black Dice Society, they started at level 1. And for this game, I'm doing the unthinkable and running it at level 7. Because we don't have a ton of time and not all the people are super familiar with it, and so it was a logistical choice that I just didn't want to soak up too much screen time with people being like, huh?
Yeah.
What's the yeah? With the fireball, finger of death, what? What? So I was like, you know what? Let's just pare this down. Let's just keep it simple.
I cast
So the
finger
game's gonna
of
be level 7.
fireball. Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. That's my spell. That is gonna be what I give to Dungeons and Dragon 5th edition, finger of fireball. But just like chill touch, that is neither chill nor touch, finger of fireball needs to be neither a finger nor a fireball.
You're right. Yeah, it has to be like a thumb or a toe.
But it's like a big beast crossover, but then it does ice damage. Yeah, 100%.
Big beast, big toe makes a lot of sense.
I have to warn you all. Right before we went live, I was drinking a protein shake and I got a big old mouthful of powder and nearly choked to death. And it's still a little verklempt. So if I mute and cough violently, that's what it is. I don't have the Rona. I promise. Do get revenge on the protein powder manufacturer, please.
Yeah, I'm terrified one day. Maybe my last day will be protein powder. Like it will catch up to me and finally eat me alive.
That'll be the end. Yeah. But I will die as I've lived if that's what happens. Yeah.
So he got the protein lung, Pop.
I mean, it's even in my Darth Vader shaker bottle, no less. So accurate. I truly will have died as I've lived. Yes.
Well, that's how he got so strong. He just had protein powder, and that's it. That mask like, the whole time.
Did you even live, bro? We thought it was a respirator. He was just mainline. Yeah. Oh.
So, what shows are you online to be doing for D&D Live?
So again, hosting the whole show, the Friday at, you would think I'd know this, but I was like, I don't care what time it is. I have to be there anyway. I believe we go live at 6, but please double check, please. For the Palace of the Vampire Queen with Ped Oswald and the cast of AP Bio. I'll be running that game for them. And then Saturday, the last game of the day, we will be playing Faster Purple Worm Kill with the guys from Beadle and Grimm, Deborah Ann Wall, Seth Green, my dear friend Xander Jeanneret, when we will fight gloriously against an opponent that is far beyond our equal, but that's okay because we're gonna fight like G's. And then sprinkled all in there, talking to all sorts of interesting people about interesting things, and just enjoying D&D and taking it to the masses, because hopefully, this is going to reach some new people that are familiar with the concept, because by now everybody's at least heard of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
But the goal, hopefully, obviously, the OGs, those of us, well, of course we're welcome there, but hopefully we're going to expand this thing we love to some new people. And so that's kind of the spirit of the weekend, is explaining D&D and magic in such a way that doesn't seem too overwhelming for people that are thinking about taking it up, so they can have all the fun that we've been having all this time.
Yeah, that's the major the barrier for me. Anytime someone asks me about getting into D&D, I'm like, well, you just kind of have to do it. But I do feel like when you watch someone playing, you're like, oh, I kind of get it, but you really don't get it until you finally do it. But demystifying D&D is like a big thing. Taking that pressure off.
Yeah, and you start thinking things like, oh well, there's 50 years of continuity of just in the Forgotten Realms and things like that. So I like to pare all of that down. And in working with the cast at the AP Bio, some of the people had played, some hadn't. Not gonna bust anybody out because hopefully when you're watching it, you can't tell who the veterans and the non-veterans are. But just having to explain the game from the very beginning, which I always do when I talk to people. I'm like, yes, what are these RPGs? Has them like what's your favorite book? What's your favorite movie? How would you like to live that? There you go. That's what a role playing game is. So yeah, we have the Palace of the Vampire Queen, which is I did for a couple of reasons. One, some of you may know that I have a tangential association with vampires, and also we do I do Ravenloft game, the Black Dice Society, Thursdays at 4 Pacific on D&D Twitch and YouTube, which is a Ravenloft stream. Again, in at one point when we were trying to figure out what I was going to do, they were asking if I was going to run a Ravenloft game here. The same thing. I think with new people, with such a short time, with having to have breaks for the commercials, I didn't think I could generate the proper amount of tension.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I don't know that I would want a person's first introduction to D&D to be Ravenloft. So but I still wanted to do something slightly that direction, and it turns out the Palace of the Vampire Queen is the very first published adventure for D&D ever. So it is an homage to the very first game. This is where that title came from. I'm going somewhere different content wise, but that's why it's a shout out to our history with the Palace of the Vampire Queen.
That's awesome. What has the last year been like, or a couple of years for you? Because you've been in you've done so many streams. You worked at Geek and Sundry, and I kind of feel like you say yes to everything. Like you are just always down to run a game. What has it been like?
It's funny that you say that, because for a very long time, I did quite intentionally. Like it was a very specific tactic to just get the maximum amount of exposure and the maximum amount of experience that I could. That if I got asked to do a thing and I could do a thing, I did do that thing. I'm just at a point now that I've just had to start turning some things down due to the crushing constraints of time and space here on the prime material plane. I got to tell you, and I don't mean to be glib about this, because I realize, with the pandemic, it has been a very difficult time for a lot of people. It has been a crushingly difficult time for a lot of people. But professionally, the last 2 years have been great for me because the whole world was home and needed something to do. So when I was running my Patreon games, was great for that. At one point, as I've shared with you before, at the high water mark, I was running between 35 and 40 games a month. In addition to the streaming, that was just paid games. Then the streaming stuff took off, which I've been very happy and blessed to do. Roll dice with you yourself a couple of times now. And yeah, it was just an opportunity to I was fortunate that I kind of had I'd bitten the bullet, and I'd kind of invested in my equipment ahead of time. I bought a better camera, bought a better mic, which of course sucked at the time. But when you're trying to grow in something, whatever it is, you kind of reach a point that you gotta jump, And so when there really became a need for content, I was kind of already in a position to do it, and already kind of had a little bit of a backlog where it's like, can I interest you in some Dungeons and Dragons: A Dark and the Wish? Yeah, do you like? I put on YouTube, and all of that. So it's just been it's been great in that respect. It's been great. And then theoretically here, when we're about to do D&D live, is theoretically the biggest audience I've been in front of yet. So I'm really just very, very lucky and blessed to get to do it. But this is the point in the conversation where I also say anything I've done, you can do. If you're thinking about streaming, get your friends together, get a camera, throw it up online. You will suck at it at the beginning, try and get better at it. and keep moving forward, because it's there's a lot of opportunity out there. There is a lot of competition, but if you find your niche and stake it out,
Yeah.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah. More a rising tide lifts all ships. And I mean, my first live stream game, the Guardians of the Multiverse, had 7 viewers because we were never on time. We had lots of equipment issues. And of course, Lauren Urban, that's how I met Lauren Urban, because she was in that, because Lauren Urban's like in... She's lurking in almost every D&D stream sometimes.
I've come to the conclusion that she actually is Tiamat, which, coming from me, is a high compliment.
Yeah, right.
I'm like the 5-headed ultimate dragon. Yeah, that kind of explains how it is that she's everywhere doing everything. Like, you think I'm everywhere. She's actually everywhere. She's like watching. She's probably in chat watching this right now. Hi, Lauren.
What has there been a philosophy that you've had moving forward with your career? Is it a say yes to everything approach, or is this like a no fear approach of like, yeah, this is a terrifying thing that I have to do? And do you ever get the jitters? Because you always do come off as very confident as a host. You always seem like, oh, this is going to be no problem. But do you feel fear? Do you ever feel nervous?
Do you fear death? 99 years. Well, 2 things. And if you've been following me along this journey, I've been telling y'all this from the very beginning. From the day I set foot inside of Geek and Sundry, I had a very specific plan. I knew this would happen. I knew I would do this. And it's interesting because the place where we're shooting D&D Live is the old Geek and Sundry studio, which is wild. It's very wild. It's under new management. It's a completely different thing, but it's the same building. And I rolled in yesterday, and I had a assigned reserved parking spot for me, and part of me was like, I made it. My plan, everything that I've done was very intentional. None of this was left to chance. And I knew I wanted people to know that I would always be on time, I would always be prepared and easy to work with, and I would always give it my all. And I knew if I did those 3 things, I would never want for gigs, and that has proven to be true. In terms of, do I feel fear? No. It's just, I just enjoy it. But I do get hyped, though. I do experience the adrenaline rush and things like that. I do feel what I think would register as nervousness, but I just like it, though. So I mean, you will see, like, I literally will be like bouncing, like, okay, let's do it. I will tell you that, since as I famously say to Aaron on Champions of Lore, when we're talking about this, I have like problems and stuff. I have difficulties. When I get ruffled is technical issues. That's what I don't like. I mean, technical issues that should be working. You know what I mean? Like, if there's an internet outage or something, again, during Champions of Lore, LA had a citywide outage where half the cast dropped right in the middle of the show. And I knew instantly it was a major outage because multiple people dropped, at the exact same second. You know what I mean? Not even like lag. I mean, they were there and then they weren't there. I'm like, that counts as an act of God. What can you do? You just got to roll with it. But times that, like, the sound's not coming into OBS, or the video's not working, or the frame rate is dropping and you don't know why, like, that kind of stuff bothers me, performance wise and stuff like that. Nah, never, because I'm just there to have a good time. And I'm like, I know as long as the people at the table are having a good time, it means the audience is having a good time. And if that's true, everybody's having a good time and you're succeeding. And so if something goes wrong, I get tongue-tied. If I mess something up, I just lean into it and keep rolling. Just have fun. Yeah, just have fun.
What now you have a red panda thing going on in Idle Champions currently, and for those that are watching right now, thank you so much for watching Idle Insights and tuning into the interview. But how did this red panda stuff come about?
So a little bit meta. When we were planning Idle Champions Presents, I'd asked about, some of the side characters and companions and things that were coming into the game. This is how Iris got added into the story. And they were like, we've got a red panda coming that'll release. And I was like, stop right there. I'll do a red panda. Like, I will make the red panda work. Leave that to me. So when Cinnamon the red panda shows up in the second arc that we did, I was just gonna do the gag of the red panda, with the arms up, and that was gonna be that. And then Mark, as Bailoff the Entertainer, summoned an illusion of red pandas riding on tricycles with sausages to distract a pack of dogs. And one of the things we were doing during that show was the audience could vote on essentially some wild magic searches. We had our little Holophant, which I designed the Holophant that Bubbles to come in. And she was sort of like she was the Loki of our story, that as the audience had declared like this crazy thing was going to happen, the Holophant would show up and do it. And one of the first things that happened was they all dressed up very fancy, which if you've seen that episode, they didn't know that was going to happen. So when I asked them to describe their fancy outfits, that's all off the dome. Mark as the legally distinct Goblin King, Adam as the Jester, Christina as the Red Panda Kigurumi, Jennifer and Aaron both in their fancy dresses. Like all of that was off the dome. So the Red Panda was a hit because of course it was. So the next vote later on was them to become Red Pandas. But at the time, I was like, but it's a red panda dressed up fancy. So they had to describe again, what's a fancy red panda? And when we said that, right then, I look right at the camera and I'm like, there's your new skin idea. You're welcome, Idol Champions, and fast forward and it turns out that was true. So yeah, there you go. We've all been blessed by the red panda-ness of it.
That's fantastic. And how do you like your personal skin?
It's kind of incredible with the butterfly collar and the bell bottoms for freely. Yeah, in working with the designers at C&E Games, who are all amazing humans, by the way. And it never ceases to amaze to see these things come to life in a video game. When I described it to them, and they were like, "Well, do you want some green streaks in his fur because he's red and green?" And I'm like, "Yes." And so they sent me the art, and I was like, "It's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect." I would have his little platform shoes, just all of it. It's wonderful. I love it.
Is there something as a dungeon master that you gravitate towards, both as, I mean, not only as a dungeon master but as a player? Because I have been fortunate enough, though during the most hectic time of my life, being part of a vampire game with you, you make vampire interesting again for me, in that you straddle this line of like, vampire has to not be what we do in the shadows for the most part, unless that is your intention.
Oh yeah,
but that darkness can be overwhelming if done wrong. Vampire is a very slippery slope, and so is Ravenloft. Is there something about that you gravitate towards, or is that just because of something? Our generation had a lot of goth, a lot of goth things going on at the time. We had lots of underworld. We had Bram Stoker's Dracula. We had a nice collection of goth culture to start off from when vampire was originally exploding. So is this why you gravitate towards the dark stuff?
The world of darkness, vampire, werewolf, mage, wraith, changeling, all of that landed squarely on my face. Yeah, like I was the target market for those things.
Right.
Like, it was like in the 90s. And I think I've told you, for me, werewolf was my first love, not vampire.
Yeah.
I grew into vampire. But when I was like 17, I'm like, let me get this straight. I can turn into an 8-foot rage monster and throw a pickup truck. Yeah, bring me that. I want that. It was kind of more into college where, my love for Ventru kind of came out. I like both. My style, and part of the reason why I like level 20 so much is I like high stakes, high power stories. I like the fate of the city / country slash world is in the balance, you know. um Obviously there is a world where niche stories really matter. Like if you've ever seen the movie Attack the Block, it was with John Boyega's first big movie, um which was a little bit of an underground hit, and I highly recommend it. You know, it's uh you know, no spoilers, but it's about an alien invasion, but they literally are protecting their block. You know,
Mm-hmm.
London's being beset, but you know, they just have to keep, you know, this building safe. You know,
Yeah.
so you can tell a very, you know, high stakes story on a small scale. I just like larger scale stuff. Um and in my style in storytelling is I take the player's actions and inactions. I ask myself, what is the worst possible consequence of what they have just done or not done? And then I just start hurling sticks of dynamite, you know? And I do that either way. And if it's a lighter hearted game, it might be more Scooby-Doo-ish. You know, if it is a more intense game, the consequences are more intense. In what I found, especially because I mentioned, you know, I was running so many games on Patreon, and I ran a lot of Vampire. In my community, I was very blessed to have a very, very thriving community that I chose to end while we were still on top. You know what I mean? I'm like, leave them wanting more, you know. Um, and what I found was in those games, when you really get down into some of these things with people you feel safe about, you can learn a lot about yourself. And I saw people changing as humans and like, you know, processing some things from the past and being able to release it because their characters had faced it, in a way that I don't think any of us expected. You know, I had an experience once, um, where it was the story in question was kind of a time jumping, you know, shenanigation thing, and somebody went back in time and they met their father, who their character's father was dead. They went back to when they were still alive because, you know, dad knew where, you know, some sword was buried or something, you know, and had him interact with the father. And at the end of it, I just had them say, like, I'm really proud of you, you know. And then, you know, the story went on, and the person messaged me later saying that actually moved them to tears afterwards because their real father had never told them that they were proud of them,
Mm.
you know. And that sort of unlocks something in them, which is interesting because as a concept, unless someone tells me their character's parents are terrible because they need them to be,
Right.
I always make parents rad,
Yeah.
because unfortunately not everybody was blessed with rad parents,
Yeah.
you know. And I ran into that too in an early streaming campaign of mine where I was talking to someone, um, that my character and their character were in a relationship, and I was like, well, you know, does your dad approve? What's he like? And they were like, no, I need my dad to be great because my real dad isn't,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And that always kind of stuck in my head, that I was like, oh, all right. And so I think, to answer your question, the darker stories allow you to plumb that in a way that, you know, that we're just gonna go beat Smog can, but is a lot less likely. And I also think because the world of darkness is this world, it's this right now, you know, this house is here, that store on the counter is there, that mall exists, because the separation from real life is smaller, it can hit harder, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whereas in D&D, you're like, well, I'm a dwarf barbarian.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you know that. But you know, when you talk about the therapeutic aspects of this, which these games really can be used to therapy. You know, people like my good friend Dr. Janina Scarlett, Megan Connell, you know, the cast of Clinical Role, Dr. B, Games to Grow, you know, who use D&D in a therapeutic setting, would processing trauma, that separation can actually be even more useful. You know what I mean? Because it's
Yeah.
like, it's not how you feel. How does your dwarf barbarian feel?
Yeah. Yeah. I find
know?
that
Yeah.
there's a lot more emotional separation in D&D. Typically, it depends on
Typically.
how it's being played. But yeah, Vampire is also interesting, and it was a good point you made about like it is so close to our real world. Uh, that the emotions, I think, and stakes run a little bit higher. It What do you think about? Have you ever been surprised by a character that you've made or someone else has made? Because I was surprised because I do tend to play one character who's built to be played over and over again in a very low key kind of way. But I also tend to play characters I've noticed that are already arcing out, I would say, because that can be a surprise for you. You could be playing a character and you realize, oh, this is a terrible character, or this is a character who is already on their way out from the very first episode, and that being Hugo. I'm like, Hugo's a monster, and he doesn't know how to relate to the world, and there is no redemption arc for him other than just not existing.
It's some bold choices as Hugo. The Anarchs of New York is the game we did. It's on Q Times YouTube. Go watch Anarchs of New York. Todd Kenreck makes some choices as his Nosferatu Hugo. Yes.
But yeah, I'm horrified by those choices. But in the context of Vampire, like, yeah, they're pretty problematic choices, frankly. But
Work though.
But what was funny is you got messaged by two different people, including myself, and I'm like, well, I kind of feel like, and I didn't say this to you. I didn't say like I feel like this character should die or anything like that or should go away. But I was kind of building up like this is not the good guy. This is the devil you have amongst you. And it was funny. Like I'm like I do this terrible thing, and you started laughing because someone else wrote, "I'm going to kill this guy."
Literally at the same time. Literally, you were like, "I'm going to do this thing," and this other person's like, "I'm going to kill him if he does this thing."
And it was the epitome of horror too, to have it be
Work,
like,
though.
yeah, you thought you solved the problem.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a little bit Gwyneth Paltrow, the head in the box kind of.
What's in the box? Yeah. Well, I think also a lot of it is what is it that you've showed up to play? You know, what is it? Not only what is it at your table, but ostensibly, what is this game? I mean, theoretically, obviously, you can play D&D however you like. You could very much play a game set in Menzo Baranzan where you're all, priests and priestesses of Lolth, it is a very cutthroat political game. But I think all things being equal, D&D is about being a hero.
Yeah.
And Vampire's not. Vampire is a storytelling game of personal horror, because you're a monster and you don't want to be, and you have this inevitable slide, which Ravenloft is more like that. It was one of the things I told the cast of the Black Dice Society when they made their characters is like, the mists don't trap good people,
Yeah.
So build your character appropriately. And I mean, if you're playing Curse of Strahd, sure, your lawful good paladin can get miracled over there and you deal with Strahd and go home. But for the most part, if the mists came to you, they came to you for a reason. And you get to explore that, I like that. One of the things that I realized fairly early was, again, I've been blessed to do this a lot. And I found I kept making characters that were very similar, even when I didn't try to. Because when LA by Night started, when I created Victor, I was coming off of having done We're Alive Frontier, where I was playing Chateau, who was this formerly exiled revolutionary leader with a group of unruly misfits that wouldn't listen to him and kept suffering because of it. So when I created Victor, I was like, what kind of vampire would be having a good time? I intentionally made him not to be crushed by ennui. That's why he's a nightclub promoter. I was like, if you're in the nightclub business, you probably think being a vampire is great.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, he's not going to be a leader. He's not going to be any of this. And I think it was like 3 or 4 episodes in where I saw the opportunity to become Baron, and I took it because I'm me.
Yeah.
So very soon after that, you asked me to guest on Heroes of the Plains. No, we were Heroes of the Vale still.
Yeah.
And I made Freely expressly to be not Victor. That he doesn't have a plan. He is not a strategist. He is a halfling of action. He just kicks in the door and it's gonna work out. He's just lucky. and I didn't want a party face. And when I was talking to the group at the time, I was like, so what do you guys need? They were like, we need a party face. And I was like, but I don't wanna, even though he's still high charisma, and then the characters since then have all been calibrated expressly to be not the one before. I made Marcid the Typhoon, who I got to play for Dimension 20, to be not Freely.
Mm-hmm.
Freely is intrinsically good. He is very sweet. Marcid is bad. He is very morally gray. He's a hired killer. Freely's a halfling. Marcid's a bugbear. It was all not that, and because I realized that unless I very consciously pushed my own default reactions, they all will end up being the same person, which apparently is me.
Yeah, I have the same tendency, and I like being crafty or coming up with. I'm very good. I feel like I'm very good at improvising a terrible plan, or doing the thing that probably shouldn't be done, like talking crap to a primordial god or anything like that. Like if you probably are my biggest enabler as a DM.
Yeah,
because you will just roll with like. If I can get you to ask me why I'm the way I am, then I know I've won.
Like, why are you like that? Although recall that same, I think it was the second time I came back to Heroes of the Plains, and I legit messaged you to the side. I was like, hey, check this out. If I release the evil goddess, is it gonna ruin your story?
I love it. I love chaos, and I think that's what I think a good DM will let players get away with a good plan or a bad plan, or any plan really. I mean, that's just trusting your players, and there's nothing I like better, and I think you're kind of the same way, of having your plans as a DM be destroyed.
Oh yeah.
Because then you get to improv, and then it's like exciting for you, and then you feel like a player at the table and not as much a DM.
It is a collaborative art. It's a story you're telling together, which, as I've said many times, when I plan out my adventures, I plan the intro in detail. The inciting incident, I plan a lot. I know roughly where we need to be by the half, and I know roughly where we need to be by the end, but I never plan the second half at all, because the dice and the players will betray you. Like whatever you think is going to happen, they will do the opposite. And it's like, you got to be flexible to just kind of roll with it. But it's like, what is it? To a skilled sailor, all wind and tide is favorable, Go with it. Wind's blowing that way. All right, we're going that way,
That's a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say for anyone watching right now because you are going to be reaching a different audience with D&D Live, for players, how do you encourage them to jump in now? Because there are so many also different avenues, and there are going to be so many different avenues for joining D&D and becoming a D&D fan. Either you're just watching live play shows, there's a movie coming out, there's I believe a TV show coming out. We've got a lot of ways to enjoy D&D. How do you encourage people just to take that leap?
I mean, this is the best time for it, really. I mean, to a certain extent, if you're watching this, you're already one of us, but you may have,
right.
Friends and family who aren't. To me, this idea that it is cool to be into this stuff is the thing that I never saw coming.
Yeah.
I grew up during the Satanic Panic in the South. So to see that swing has been wild, which for me, honestly, for my money, I think is largely due in part to the MCU. I think you had kids who grew up loving this stuff, who are now the decision makers at major companies, who took on this subject matter and took it seriously, that didn't take it as though that's kid stuff. They were like, no, John Favreau loves Iron Man, and loves the Mandalorian, and you can tell. So this kid stuff got treated seriously, and then people are engaging in this content, and it's like, oh, it's actually okay to be into Captain America, all right. And then that sort of overflowed, that it's like, well, if I can be into comic books, I can be into D&D, I can be into magic, I can be into all this stuff that I secretly kind of wanted to, because you don't know how many people I know. They were like, I wanted to play in high school, but didn't have anybody to play with, or people thought I was one of the cool kids and wouldn't invite me. So The best way to do it is just to do it. And the way I explain it to people, I always do the exact same thing. I'm like, what's your favorite book? What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite TV show? How would you like to live that?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And when we're and I remember you and I talked about this at the Stream of Many Eyes back in 2018. I'll tell somebody, I'm like, so we're standing here right now, and you hear a scream and a crash from right over there. What would you like to do? And people are like, I go see what happened. I'm like, all right. You walk around the corner and you see one of the people that was just serving lunch is laying on the floor with a knife in his neck. And there's bloody footprints leading out the door. What would you like to do? And they're like, I see if he's okay. You know what I mean? And I'm like, cool, well, great. Now we're playing. That's it. That what we just did? That's it. That's role playing. Every once in a while, you roll one of these dice, one of the shiny click clacks, math click clacks to simulate chance. But besides that, you've now done it. So you get it. The rest of it's details. The rest of it is just dressing on the Christmas tree, but you've comprehended the concept of it. So just get in and have fun.
With your character Freely, who is in Idle Champions as well. So you are a video game character. What are your favorite Freely moments, would you say, from any game?
It's this would be the optimal time for me to throw his picture up behind me, but I don't know that I have it set up yet on the new computer. My lucky boy. My top Freely moments are releasing Saranthus, unleashing an evil god to save Penelope, because it made sense. That's what he would do. It's like he didn't know her and he didn't really know them. And she's like, let me out and I'll save your friend. And he's like, okay, because he's got an intelligence of 8. So seems legit,
Yeah, a little opposite of Frodo, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, okay, one ring, I'll do what you say.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah, can do. But it worked out fine. I honestly think that probably was his top moment. Besides that, getting a natural 20 to smite on Lord Soth was great. I knew we couldn't beat him, but at least I laid a scuff on his armor.
Yeah. You are part of that history now.
I'm like, every time he looks at that mark, he's gonna remember one little halfling. Yeah.
It'd been pretty funny if he just died. I'm like, well, that's out now.
Well, what's funny though is every character I plan from level 1 to level 20. I literally have a spreadsheet for Freely of every single level and everything that will happen, because it's a holdover for me back to the 3 and 3.5 days where abilities had prerequisites.
Yeah, you really had to.
Yeah, because if you made the wrong choice early, you were just doomed, where you were like, oh, I'd really like to be able to do this. And it's like, well, you needed to pick up that feat at level 5. Sucks. So I plan it all out. But every other character, I really do have this like long plan. Like I can tell you what like Baron Victor Temple wants over the next 100 years. But when you talk to me about Freely, that you're like, well, what does he want to accomplish? What's his story? I'm like, he doesn't have one. He's really just happy to be there. Like he's the Dirk Gently of adventurers. He's like, well, I'm here, so must need some heroing to do. Like literally. I understand him so much that it's like that's just where my brain goes with him. That is just like, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I feel like I think you and I both have a character like. You and I play similar characters in the fact that like we can play that character at any moment. Like if someone asks me to be a live stream, I tend to play Avon just because I know how to play Avon. I know how he thinks. I've been playing him since he was 8. Like he's just having a great time being a villain. Depends on the party how much he gets to be a villain, but he will do absolutely the most awful thing if you give him the rope. So it's a very healthy character for a dungeon master to play in the sense that like it requires very little work in that way. Every other character I have to play or I decide to play, it does. I kind of agonize over like where are they going to go, level per level. Where do they want to go? What is their arc? I do find it very freeing, and I don't necessarily believe that characters need arcs. I think some of the most beloved characters ever have no arcs. I mean, if you look at a lot of television. No One in the Office, No one in what Always Sunny in Philadelphia. No one has an arc there. Uh, it's
Well, that and a lot of times you can't define it in advance because if you
yeah,
try and define it in advance, that's when it feels forced.
yeah,
You know, where because you reach these moments where everything about the character says turn right, but some preconceived notion says turn left, and the audience knows and won't like it. You know, versus when you're there in those moments. Again, back to Victor. I did not plan for him to be in a leadership role, and just if you haven't seen the show, there was a person in a position of power who had been compromised. Baron Abrams, if you have seen the show. And at the break, I went to Jason and I was like, and I did the exact same thing I did with you, that I was like, hey, so if I kill Abrams, is that gonna mess up the story? And he's like, well, no, but I don't know if you can kill him. I was like, if I kill Abrams, will that mess up the story? And he was like, no. And so I got to the moment that I was fully prepared to do it, and the opportunity, essentially just to blackmail him, came up. And I did that. And it was because even though that super was not the plan, in that moment, it's what made sense. You know, it was in alignment with the character and his worldview. And I don't mean this is just that's what my character would do, because usually that's what my character would do is is a rationalization for being a jerk. Don't do that. But you know, it with his arc, it was very contiguous. And if I'd and I had to be free to go with that and let him become who he wanted to become, who I was learning him to be, if that makes sense. Because again, with Marcide, I knew he was very morally gray and ambiguous, but he turned out to be really terrible. And some of that was Brennan's doing. Because again, if you saw Pirates of Leviathan, which if not, highly recommended, it's on Dimension 20. Matt Mercer, Marisha, Brie Iyengar, Christina Ariel, me, and Carlos Luna. It starts with I'm working for the bad guys, and the very first thing I'm told to do is to hunt down and kill a 12-year-old. Literally, which we did not discuss, by the way. This is so when I'm told that on camera,
yeah.
I'm finding out when you're finding out, right? And I was just like, okay, you know? So this is who we are now. Yeah, okay. Let's just see where this goes. So yeah, it's you gotta give them the room to be who they are, and if that is a massively different arc, that's cool. If it is a fairly straight line, that's cool too. I think the only burden that you have is to make sure you try and find a logical reason why your characters would stay together. That's you run into that a lot, especially in D&D. You know, the chaotic evil rogue and the lawful good paladin that are constantly at odds, unless you got some real big overarching cause.
Yeah.
You know, there's no reason why they would travel together, and that friction will just compound, you know. But besides that, yeah, do your thing.
The bit of a secret, but I know exactly the moment where my main character Aaron shifted into pure evil, because before was like largely a good character, a ranger or whatever. But I started playing him in Vampire the Masquerade live play in Spokane, Washington, as a Brujah who wore suits, because all Brujah like wore leather jackets and chains. I'm like, okay, well, what if one wore a suit? Because that's anarchy against anarchy. So he wore suits all the time. And I had no plan for that character other than just being kind of remotely evil. But then it was clear that the head of the Brujah clan was really shit at being a leader, and was also the prince, and I killed him. Like in game.
It bees like that sometimes.
And then Avron's like, oh, power. Okay, let's like this is what chaos can be. And it was so fun to watch like play out, and everyone was such a good role player and stuff like that. And I'm sitting there like with like probably 30 role players, just like, how did this happen? It was this it almost felt like the end of like the second Chronicles of Riddick moment, where like, oh, I guess I'm in charge now.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do?
You keep what you kill. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Also, Kindred the Embrace had business Bruja too. They wore suits. The
yeah,
business
yeah.
Bruja. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Always have. What were those rounds that had fire in them? Shotgun
Dragon's
rounds.
Breath.
Yeah, Dragon's Breath rounds.
Breath round.
Always have a few of those on you.
That's just good life advice.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Changes the fight real quick. And ends the conversation. And another example, I think, like I felt very well challenged by DM was Jasmine Bular, where I didn't realize a character liked undead or didn't have the same moral problems with undead. And when we were faced with that, with both Freely and as well as Lauren Urban playing Orkara Eldrex, he's like, we don't know that this character is evil, even though they're a lich. That was like a weird moment of like, oh, so there is a moral backbone at some point, if pressed. Like, there is this kind of hard line of no absolutes, which I think chaotic characters tend to. They have a few things. And they have to have a few things, I think.
Yeah, I think people misunderstand the axis of law neutrality and chaos, of good neutrality and evil too. That chaotic evil doesn't necessarily mean cackling madman. It is a person who values chaos and who values evil. And evil, you can replace the word evil with selfishness, because even in life, the spectrum from good to evil is selflessness to selfishness. And the more selfish your actions, the more evil those actions are. So, because for my money, even though historically we think the chaotic evil character is the worst character, for me, lawful evil is the worst character, because they got a code and they're going to stick to it no matter how terrible, that becomes. The chaotic evil character on occasion may surprise you and actually
Yeah, a broken watch, as we say, is right twice.
Yeah. Just kick one your direction every once in a while. The lawful evil, probably not. Probably not. I think all things being equal in the development of the game, especially 5th edition, people have largely moved away from alignment.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that back in the day, 2nd edition and stuff, it was a hard set. Like a paladin had to be lawful good, a barbarian can't be a lawful alignment, things like that. Now they're more like guidelines for how you see the world, which I've done it all, and I go back and forth in my mind about Freely's alignment. To tell you the truth, I think he's lawful good, but he might be neutral good, because like the methods don't really matter to him. Like sometimes it's like, oh, if call the constabulary, okay. Sometimes it's like, no, they're bad too, so he's just, in his heart, he's all good, but I played a true neutral character for a long time, and that was very convenient, because man, it was case for case. He's like, is this even my problem? Sucks. Sucks you got robbed, should have paid for cards, so
what's the next thing that you would like to explore as a character or an actor, in terms, like, what is your favorite character? Do you really feel like, is it really Victor? Like, in the way that I kind of have my default that I gravitate towards, is Victor your default? Like, you eventually just kind of, because when you're a dungeon master, you are seeing everything from a higher level often.
Yep.
And we will play characters that are, I would say, not bright all the time as a vacation from ourselves.
Does make things easier, yeah.
But we do also gravitate towards these characters who kind of see the long plan.
Victor is me. If I became a vampire today, in 15 years, I'd have Victor's life. But it's easy to put on that mask because I'm kind of already wearing it. Like it is nothing to slip into Victor, because his default responses are my default responses. Other times it takes a little more thought. Like it's
certainly in reason. Like you probably, as far as I know, have not murdered a bunch of people. Or
no, I don't know what you're talking about. No, of course not.
I have exploded no elves. Though
Right.
I don't know. I to be honest, I would probably still do it if given the choice.
Let's
But
be honest. If you knew you could, you'd explode at least one elf.
oh yeah, if I could get away with it, if godhood was on the table, I'm like,
Right.
wait. I'm like morality. Like, what's morality when like godhood is here, and I'm like, you could get resurrected later.
What's a man to a god? Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Or what's a king to a god? Yeah. Yeah. You know, because I'm fortunate in the sense that I've gotten to do a lot of this. You know, so I've gotten to scratch a lot of itches. Um, so I can't say there's anything that I'm like, I really wish I had the opportunity to do X, because I have the opportunities to do X. You
Right.
know, um, I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to playing Victor again, though. You know, we're as of now we're back in the studio in 10 days for season 5 of LA by Night, and it'll be good. It'll be good to play the Baron again. I got some idea of what's happening, because we you know, the show is completely improvised, but I find something that is very useful that I myself do on Black Dice Society, that I will give the characters at least a rough heads up, you know, that it's like, hey, check this out. You know, by the break, you should be leaving. Do go towards the woods. Don't go towards the ocean, you know, or I'll be like, hey, tonight is a little more of a deep breath episode where you guys are going to get to talk to each other a little bit, and, you know, we'll do some character stuff, because next week's gonna be a meat grinder. Like, you know, when they went into Falcovnia, I was like, hey, if you guys want to have moments today, because the next 2 or 3 weeks there's not gonna be time for moments, because there's endless oncoming hordes of fascists and zombies. You know, so I'll try and give them a heads up in that sense, because I find it helps everybody to be rowing in the same direction, in terms of both pacing and in terms of their of at least being in alignment with each other. Like, I'm fine if they don't follow my plan. It's tough when they don't follow each other's plan, because if you're not careful, you can chew up a lot of screen time of you know, rabbit season, duck season, rabbit season, duck season. I'm like, no, it's rabbit season. Rabbit season. You know?
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Now proceed. You know? So, because I think that's also one of the main differences between a stream and a home game, in that, you know, is a home game is a social event. You know, the fact that you eat a meal together, that you talk about Loki together, that you talk about work, you know, complain about your relationship problems, and then, you know, at some point play a game. You know, that's all part of it. On a stream, that's all that fat's trimmed out of it, you know, and you're just like just down to the game, you know. So streamlining a lot of that to jump in, you know, in medias res, which I always say wrong, but I'm from Arkansas, I'm not even supposed to know those words, you know, to jump in as late as you can, tell your story, and, you know, get out leaving them wanting more is the idea. And I will, but to tell you the truth, I'll find, if, you know, you still have competition for your home game, in the sense of literally anything else they could be doing. You know, the rest of life is your competition. So if you're finding you're having trouble booking sessions with people, or they're kind of ambivalent, maybe try tighten it up a little bit, you know, and then leave it on a cliffhanger. Probably have a little easier time getting them back next week.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you got a lot going on. D&D Live, all of the things. Red Pandas. I feel like D&D Live a little more tension than the Red Panda thing. But
the Red Panda thing is dope, though. Make sure you get your freely Red Panda skin. It's and have my lucky boy in your formation. He makes everybody else better by being there, which I love that they put that mechanic, by the way, that he literally helps everybody else just by being there. You can have almost all the heroes of the plains. I think we're only missing Whittle. The rest of the squad.
We're just missing Whittle. So, well, thank you, B-Dave, for being on the show so much, as always. It is always fantastic to any excuse to get paid to talk to you.
Man, yeah. 2 of my favorite things, talking to Todd and getting paid.
Well, we'll talk to you anyways. So, like, cool. All right, well, you're going to pay me? All right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Living the dream, y'all. We're living the dream. Yep.
Thank you everyone at home for watching. We really appreciate you. Have a great
You
day.
know what? Bye, Lauren. I'm sure you're in chat. I haven't even checked. That's me pushing the chips in blind. I'm sure Lauren's there. Bye, Lauren.
Bye,
Bye,
Lauren.
everybody else.
Bye, Lauren.